Arda Ocal with ESPN, happy to be joined by the Rated R superstar Edge, who will be competing with the Universal Championship on the line at WrestleMania 37, taking on Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan, joining us right now, right here. Edge, it's really good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be seen. Good to see you too, buddy. Long time no chat.
Yeah, we definitely chat here and there about the Leafs, but this will be about WrestleMania memories. You've had quite a few WrestleMania matches, and let's start here. Let's start with the fact that you have returned to WWE. This is now your second WrestleMania in your sort of second career, so to speak, in WWE. It kind of reminds me of Shawn Michaels a little bit. He had his first career, and then he really cemented his legacy in his second career, right? Like, how do you view going into this WrestleMania and what that means for you and your career?
I think Sean did set a template there because of the scenario. So you do look at that as an example. What's interesting is I think Sean was gone for 4 years. He was gone for 9. It was an interesting time frame to try and come back, and also come back and not embarrass myself, and try and come back and be at a level where I feel like I can get in there and still contribute, hopefully to the point where I can help a main event at WrestleMania. It's still strange. It's still very surreal. It honestly feels like this is the first WrestleMania, because last year was so strange and so right in the infancy of this pandemic, and everyone kind of stumbling around trying to figure out what this is and what is life now and how do we adapt and what do we do. This year, finally having, some form of audience back, it feels like, okay, right, now we're getting on the path to whatever our new normal is. And that feels good. Now it feels like, right, now we're properly moving into this second stage of my career, I guess. But it really is. It's a second stage, but it's also the final act. And because of that, I put a lot of importance and a lot of weight on it, and because I want it to be good. I didn't want to come back and do the greatest hits and just do the same old that I used to do. I wanted to recalibrate my style. I wanted to add different elements to the character. And that to me was key to making sure that this second and / final act is something hopefully compelling for the audience.
So let's go back to that Randy Orton match. That was your first one back, like you said, in 9 years. It was a very special circumstance. You battle all around the Performance Center. There's no audience there. But I remember talking to you before that match and how important it was for you to have a match like that upon your return, right? Like to prove it to yourself that you can still do this. How do you look back on that match now, a year later?
It feels so strange, just because of the utter silence. There was just nothing. There was room tone and us and the noises we made. And, the announcers laid out a lot. And so it made for a lot of space, from an audio perspective, which you're not used to with professional wrestling. There's always noise. There's always noise of some sort. Even, when we didn't have a crowd, when we started piping in the noise, it just made it feel more like what wrestling is. And I know at first we were kind of lambasted for it. And I think it was Randy and I also that had the first match with piped in noise, and everybody was up in arms about it. Now it's just normal. And I think it's needed until we get audiences back for the audience at home. And I think that WrestleMania was that learning curve of realizing, wow, this is really silent. And you can hear the flesh smacking and all of those things, but there's just something lost without some form of audio stimulation, I guess. So that Mania is just so weird, man. There's no other way to put it. And we did what we had to do. We put on a show to try and help people just stop thinking about it for just those 2 nights. But looking back on it, and I haven't, but just thinking how odd it was while we were doing it in terms of just there's nothing to play off of except for each other. So you're truly kind of in the pocket. It's almost like a scene in a movie, and you're performing a scene with another with your actor, and that's really what it became. But that's not what wrestling is. So it was just, in looking back now, it was just strange. And I think it will be like the WrestleMania that you don't see many highlights from.
Interesting. So when you talked about this match, there's going to be a crowd. You're in a main event match. You're with Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan. In a way, does this sort of feel like that match that you wanted last year's match to be? Like, does this feel like the circumstances have now aligned at this point in your career where now you have this situation where this is the one that's going to prove it to you, so to speak?
Yeah, I think Backlash more than anything was the one where I went, okay, right, this is a proper wrestling match. We just got in and wrestled. And contrary to reports, there weren't multiple takes or anything like that. We did one straight through and then like 4 pickup shots after the fact. And so when we went and we got to the back after we did it, and they said, you guys went like 48 minutes. Whoa, okay, all right. Yeah. And we were going. So that for me, that was kind of the test. Also, the massive amount of pressure that was involved in that one because of the billing of it, and that all falls to Randy and I. We didn't come up with it, but we have to try and make something of it, and that was difficult. That was a pressure cooker. After 9.5 years, whatever it was, in a Royal Rumble and a last man standing match, to then be in something billed as the greatest wrestling match ever. Man, I mean, it's just a stupid amount of expectation because it's subjective. There's no such thing. But you still go, okay, right. You want to do your damnedest to put on the best match you possibly can given these circumstances. And so with that amount of pressure and all of those factors into it, that to me was kind of like the testing ground to see where I was actually at. And then coming out of that, even though I tore my tricep, I felt really good because I was like, okay, I can still do this at the level that I was hoping I could.
So you've been a part of many WrestleManias, and of course there's an added pressure to even performing at WrestleMania because it is the grandest stage of them all. It is the biggest show of the year. For WWE, the Super Bowl, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I want to pick and choose some of the matches that you've had at WrestleMania's past. And I just love to hear, your thoughts going into the match or how you were feeling that day or some of your memories from those matches. Let's start with the first match, WrestleMania 2000. It was billed as a tables match, but really it was the spiritual beginnings of the TLC match. And I'd love to hear, because like this is such an interesting match to have your first WrestleMania match, right? Because it's a high profile match. It has the potential to steal the show. It has the potential, and as we saw, to be very violent as well, and very difficult physically. So like, what were some of the emotions you were feeling that day?
We were all excited because of those things. We knew all of these things. We knew, and looking at the card, it's like, no, we can steal this. This show can be ours. And, everybody tries for that, but sometimes the circumstances just aren't in your favor and there's only so much you can do. Well, we knew we didn't have that problem. We had 6 guys who all were on the same page of what we wanted to try to accomplish, and that was to steal the show. Then you put us in a first time ever scenario. It's the first triple ladder match ever. Blank canvas. And because the fact that there was 6 of us, the action never had to stop. So it was truly just like, it was car crash TV, but we were still able to, I'd like to think, sell everything. We didn't throw things away because there was 2 more guys that could cycle through and then 2 more guys that could cycle through. But at that point you have the initial 2 up. And so we just knew, again, like the tag team ladder match that we had with the Hardys at No Mercy prior to that, a blank canvas. It's never been done before. So when you can be on the ground floor of something like that and you're basically creating something that hasn't been done, chances are you can do something special. It doesn't mean it's always going to be the case. It doesn't mean it's going to stand the test of time or any of those things. Luckily with this, though, it ends up morphing into the TLC and then becoming a pay-per-view and, kind of living on. And it's all from this match, which is our first WrestleMania. And that's kind of crazy when I think of it in those terms. And I never really have before.
The next year, you have a straight up advertised as a TLC match, same participants. The crowning moment from that match is the spear on Jeff Hardy. I don't think you could have scripted a more perfect looking moment. Like just the way that it almost feels like you're hanging there for a split second, holding him as like, it's like the perfect spot, like the perfect bump. Like it just looks really, really nice. Like, take me through that. Take me through that moment and how you were able to nail it so well.
There's not a lot of thought. You can't think too much. You really just have to go with instinct. And if you watch it back, there's a nanosecond where I almost committed too soon. It's real slight, but if you watch it, if I had gone there, things would have went horribly, horribly wrong. I probably would have hit Jeff in the feet, which would have caused him to go face first into the mat. Things could have gone sideways pretty quickly. Thankfully, I recalibrated and I went, oh, okay. And I just, that little hesitation and then went. The entire goal of that was to try and land this so Jeff is flat, because he is completely trusting me. I'm guiding this thing. I'm catching him. I'm holding him. I'm riding us down to the mat. I can't think about those things. I just have to do it. So it's hit, catch, use this arm as my base and my break. And in doing that, ended up DDTing myself from about 15 feet in the air. So I just remember coming up and going, whoa, and floating back. But then as I landed on my back and I looked over and I saw Jeff, I was like, we did it. We did it. And it was strange that year because we're in the Astrodome, and that was the first instance of working in a huge venue like that. So you couldn't really hear it the way you normally would in an arena. The sound doesn't come at you. It goes up, bounces off, and has to come back down to you. So there's almost a weird delay to it. And all of us, we got to the back and we're like, man, the crowd didn't sound like we thought they would. And then, get to the after party and they're playing it up on the big screen, and now you can hear the crowd. And we're like, oh, there they are. Okay, they were there. They were there. We had them. And just to I don't know how many times over the years that's replayed, and how many times over the years it will continue to be replayed, and it will live on far after Jeff and I are gone. And just to see the audience bounce when we landed, I think that was a very, very cool moment as a performer, when you can elicit that kind of response. That's what you go for, and you want to go for it at WrestleMania, so it does live on like that.
The next year, another stadium, your hometown, WrestleMania X8. You have a match with Booker T, and the issue is shampoo.
Yeah, it's heated.
Very important. This is a reason to have a WrestleMania.
Japanese shampoo, by the way.
Oh, right. Oh, pardon me. Yeah, it was the commercial. Everything is just a big hoopla, big ordeal. My question is, though, this is your first. You were at WrestleMania 6.
Yeah.
You were there in attendance as a fan, and now you get to perform at WrestleMania in Toronto, your hometown, and you have a singles match, which is really cool. And I'm just wondering, like, even jokes aside, like storyline aside, like, take me through that day. Like, that must have been a very busy day, like friends and family around, just the vibe of being in Toronto. Like, what was that like?
It was, I was insanely happy, but there was also a weird added pressure because it was my hometown, and because you want it to just be perfect. But at the same time, I couldn't focus on the fact that, oh, this storyline is based around a shampoo endorsement. I couldn't go down that road, because then that would be frustrating. I have to focus on the fact that 12 years ago, I was in the 11th row watching this, and now I am here doing it. And that was always my mindset, like this was going to happen, but you can't know that 12 years later, WrestleMania is going to be back in the Sky Dome. You can't know all of these things. So you have to just enjoy it. And I remember getting in the ring and staring at the exact spot where I sat. And I just took a moment to focus on that. And I was like, I went from there and now I'm here. That was the goal. Okay. And here we go. And then Booker and I, commenced to, hitting each other so hard that I felt like I had lightning bolts in my toes.
Was that one of the more stiff matches? I mean, you had TLC matches, and here you are telling me that Booker and you beat the crap out of each other.
If you watch it back and you watch our first exchange, we are cranking each other. And there's a couple moments where you see both of our legs go, okay, all right. But we're there, and we both had the same mentality, and we both had the same mindset. And right before that, we also had 8 minutes cut from our match.
Oh,
so we're now going, okay, well, we had this 20-minute match that is now down to like 11 or whatever it was, or 12 or 8. I just remember, like, we got cut in half. And so you just have to try and figure that out, and then also not rush just because you had all that time cut. But that's the nature of the beast.
Let me pick a couple more WrestleManias before we let you go here. WrestleMania 22, Mick Foley. People will always remember the flaming table spot. I'd like to know the planning of that. It seems like obviously a focal point of that match, and I'm wondering whose idea it was. If it wasn't yours, what your initial reactions were. Like, take me through the genesis of the flaming table.
Generally speaking, if you see me do something stupid, it was my idea. Whether it's the AA off the ladders against Cena, my idea. The flaming table.
Also your hometown.
Yes, also my hometown. Jeff Hardy jumping off of me through a ladder to take me out of a match at WrestleMania 23, my idea. Flaming table, my idea. What I didn't think all the way through was the fact that the flame retardant gel they put on me had almost entirely been sweat off by that point. And I'm not wearing layers, and I'm diving face first into this thing. And I remember running towards Mick going, he's got 2 flannels on. He's going in back first, which is going to suck. I'm going face first into this thing. I did not fully think this thing through, but because we had kind of backed ourselves into the corner in a promo earlier, where we lit a table on fire, we're like, well, that has to be the finish now. It has to be, and do the spear off the apron through it. There's no other way for the culmination of this thing to happen. And again, it's WrestleMania. So, if you pull this off, that is the kind of thing that is going to solidify and cement your brand. You always try and find those scenarios at WrestleMania. They aren't always possible, but if they are, and you got Mick Foley as an opponent who wants to have his WrestleMania moment, but who also wants to cement me as a main event player, all of those things coming together in this perfect storm, yeah, I'm diving headfirst into flaming tables with thumbtacks in my back. All there is to it. That, for me, that one was the springboard. Mick Foley was the springboard. And one of the reasons that I can still be here talking about Edge all of these years later.
And essentially most WrestleManias, pretty much all of them afterwards, you were in a title match, including 24 against The Undertaker. And I'm curious, that the streak was still intact. Your streak, in a way, was still there, here and there. I mean, you had one loss, but like really it wasn't a singles loss. Like I'm curious though, like, was there ever a discussion that Edge would be the one to break the Undertaker streak at that WrestleMania?
So initially at WrestleMania 23, I was supposed to win Money in the Bank and keep my streak intact. A week before, I was pulled aside and said, no, we're going to go with Kennedy. And I said, okay, but are we still going with Taker and I next year? Because 7-0 versus 16-0, maybe it was, that seems pretty appealing. And then you throw in the title into that mix. That seems like a no-brainer. But I was told that was the plan. Okay, that's the plan. So we came up with that way to get me out of the match as an asterisk. Like, okay, well, he was taken out of the match. He didn't lose the match, just to have some semblance of maybe he's still kind of undefeated at WrestleMania, because that was still the plan going forward the following year. And then in the lead up to it, I was asked, what do you think about ending the streak? And I said no, adamantly no. I don't think it ever should have ended until what we knew was his final WrestleMania. And even then, maybe not. But I just didn't think it was right. I also didn't think at that point in my career I needed it. I think that should have been saved for someone who you want to strap the rocket to, and and you trust, and is going to, like, to me, Roman Reigns was the guy to do it. And that's where it should have been done. Brock Lesnar didn't need it, and I get he's a believable one to do it. Okay, great. Well, this is professional wrestling, it's not MMA. So to me, you do it with the character that you think is going to pull your cart for the next 10, 15 years. And Edge was already established. I already had my heat. To me, give that to someone who would need it and could use that going forward. I could use a multitude of other things going forward, and I knew that. So pretty quickly, I think that got shot down. And Taker, I mean, he was wide open. Like, I think he was open to it, but I just didn't think it was right. And that's not to say it would have happened, even if I said, yeah, let's do it. But it was a non-starter for me.
It was discussed and you said, no, this is not happening, at least on my point of view.
Yeah.
So when you look back on it, last question for you, you look back on all your WrestleMania matches, whether it's performance in the ring or storytelling or just how you felt after the match or even something you overcame, whatever it is, which WrestleMania match up until this point would you say you're most proud of and why?
Oh, man. Well, luckily, I'm lucky that that's a tough question. Because I could point to the triple ladder match. I could point to TLC in Houston. I could point to Mick Foley. I could point to the first Money in the Bank. I could point to main eventing against Undertaker. I mean, all ridiculous scenarios, all proud of all of them. It's so hard, because without those TLC matches, I don't know if I get the chance to do that hardcore match with Mick Foley. And without that hardcore match with Mick Foley, I don't know if I get to main event against Undertaker. So I can't say one's more important. They're all part of the story. They're all chapters in the book to getting to the next point. And which brings me to this year and main eventing it again. Like, it's so hard. Like, you can't name your favorite child, right?
Sure.
Because there isn't one. And I think that's kind of what WrestleMania has become for me. And again, I'm lucky that that's the case.
Unless you have one child like me, then it's very easy to name your favorite child.
That's totally.
I digress. That's different. Okay, very last question for you. Let's bring it back to WrestleMania 37. You're in the main event. Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan, Universal Championship. I mean, how does it feel? The fact that you've had so many WrestleManias, you've been in a main event before, you've had many important, significant matches at WrestleMania. You had to take 9 years off. You're back again. You've already had this very strange WrestleMania match, but now you're going to be in front of a crowd. You're going to be in a stadium again. You're going to be with two fantastic performers, and it's a main event match with a title on the line again. Like, how does that even sound to you right now?
I mean, it sounds amazing. It sounds ridiculous that this is even a conversation to be had. And I don't know if this helps further the narrative of the match, but it has to be said. When I look at it and I take Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan, and Edge out of it, and I look at it from Adam, Joe, and Brian, and what each of us has come through to be able to be in this situation it's kind of mind-boggling. And to me, that story is underneath but bigger than all of it. Because I'd like to think that wrestling, when it really works, there's more to it than just good guy, bad guy. And I think this can be one of those stories of these guys didn't give up. They kept grinding toward getting this back. And this is a culmination of that. And you have three guys that were manage to do it and all end up in the same match at the same time, that's crazy. If you had said 4 or 5, 2 years ago that this would be the case, I'm pretty sure 99% of the people that you asked would go, that's insane. That's not going to happen. Yet here we are. When you look at it in those terms, that to me is kind of the aspect of it that makes this really damn special.
WrestleMania 37, April 10th and 11th, 2-night extravaganza happening on Peacock. Edge will be a part of the Universal Championship match against Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns. Edge, always appreciate talking to you. I think this is interview number, 100 between us. And I always look forward to them. Yeah, it might be 101. Thanks for your time, dude. I appreciate it always. Go Leafs. Look at that. See, if anything, you are the Toronto Maple Leafs Honor, Pride, Courage champion. I love that you have that.
Right there.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.